Grüß euch, Servus miteinander. Hi everybody. My name is Dieter Vanschura and I'm the owner and manager of the Artelino company. We sell Japanese prints in weekly online auctions, and the topic of my video today are the Dutch in Nagasaki. What the hell did they do in Nagasaki? They had a trade monopoly from 1600 until roughly 1850. For 250 years, imagine. And I'm going to tell you, okay, how it happened and how it ended. We have to go back to the 16th century. At that time, huge civil wars raged in Japan. It was the period of the Warring States, or the Sengoku Wars. Powerful local lords fought for the supremacy in Japan. And finally in 1600, one of them, a smart guy, his name was Ieyasu Tokugawa, he finally pacified and unified Japan. However, it came at several prices. First of all, this Tokugawa clan ruled Japan in a strict way for 250 years. And the other thing was, Ieyasu completely secluded Japan from the outside of the world. No Japanese was allowed to leave Japan, and no foreigner was allowed to enter Japan. Imagine! And this kept for 250 years. Until in 1854, an American commander, his name was Matthew Perry, he forced the opening of Japan with a fleet of black ships. Why black? Because they were made of iron, and the Japanese never had seen iron ships. They were terrified. Japan in 1850 was a medieval country. It had been secluded from the outside. Okay, however, this seclusion was not quite complete. There was a little trade post on an artificial small island off the coast of Nagasaki, and it was the Dutch trade post of Deshima. And the Dutch East India Company, they had the trade monopoly. And how did this happen? We have to go back to the year 1600. Then 23 half-starved Dutch seamen and their British captain, his name was Will Adams, they landed in Osuki Bay in Kyushu, that's a southern island of Japan. They were half dead, and they were the survivors of an expedition of originally 5 ships that had left Rotterdam 2 years ago. What was their mission? Their mission was to raid Spanish and Portuguese settlements in Africa and in Asia, and to come home with pepper and other valuable spices. Hey, you will think, hey, what's so valuable about pepper? Are you crazy? Well, at that time, pepper was more valuable than gold. In our German language, we have a word, Pfeffersack, that is a synonym for a very, very rich man. And Pfeffersack, that is literally, the literal translation is pepper bag. So that was the rich asset at that time. Well, back to our half-starved seamen. The Japanese took care of them. However, 7 were so weakened that they died later. The captain survived, and the captain, Will Adams, by and by could win the confidence and trust of the shogun Ieyasu Tokugawa, which was quite important because the Dutch were not the first Europeans to land in Japan. There were already the Portuguese, who were the enemies of the Dutch, and they had come in 1543 as missionaries, as Christian missionaries. And they tried to influence Tokugawa and said, hey, these seamen, they are bandits, hang them or expel them. But it didn't happen. Ieyasu expelled the Portuguese missionaries and installed the Dutch people for this trade monopoly, which lasted for 250 years. Okay, what was life like at Deshima? It was a tiny, tiny island, and it had a permanent staff of roughly 10 Dutch men. The emphasis is on men. Women were not allowed. And usually 2 ships arrived. What did they transport? What did they import? What did they export? They usually came with silk from China and with other valuable goods from other Asian countries, because also the trade with a country like China was not direct, but via the East India Dutch Company. And when the ship returned, they exported from Japan mainly ceramics. You may have heard about Arita and Imari, and the Dutch liked them and paid high prices, and the Japanese have always been smart in catering for foreigners. They even painted on their ceramics Dutch motifs when the demand was there. Well, the Dutch were not allowed to leave their tiny island, and the Japanese were not allowed to enter it. However, when the night broke in, there was one little exception. Well, then the Japanese courtesans, the prostitutes, they came in. And that may have been the reason why one Dutch woman wanted to accompany her husband when he was appointed in 1817 as the new director of the Deshima operations. Her name was Titia Koch-Blomhoff, and she was the first woman, imagine, to enter Japanese soil. But that was a strict no-no, and the Japanese shogunate ordered her, she has to leave, and 3 months later, when the next ship arrived, she had to leave Japan. And the unfortunate woman never saw her husband again. She died 4 years later. Maybe of broken heart, I don't know. Well, let's talk a little bit about the end of the trade monopoly. In 1853 and then again in 1854, this Commander Matthew Perry came with his black ships, and he forced the Japanese to open their country in the Treaty of Kanagawa. And that ended the Dutch trade monopoly. A little bit later, in 1855, the director of Deshima at that time, his name was Donker Curtius, at least he could negotiate a similar treaty with the Japanese, but the profitable period of this trade monopoly was over once and forever. So, my dear friends, why I'm telling you this? Well, I'm selling Japanese prints. What does that have to do with Japanese prints? Well, the presence of the Dutch guys had become a subject for Japanese ukiyo-e makers, mainly in the first half of the 19th century. The Japanese were curious about these strangers, which they could not see or meet in person. These strange guys with their huge noses, their strange habits and their strange ships. And so the ukiyo-e makers, they made woodblock prints showing these Dutch people and their strange habits and their ships and everything the Japanese people may have been interested in, because ukiyo-e was a commercial business. Well, these prints, a genre of its own, even has a name. They're called Nagasaki-e. Nagasaki is clear, and E is the Japanese word for an image or a picture. And today, these Nagasaki-e are well in demand by collectors worldwide, but mainly by the Dutch, of course. They are very popular, to the delight of ukiyo-e dealers and auctioneers like Artelino. Well, I could talk a lot more and tell you more about the Dutch in Nagasaki, but time is running out. And therefore, let's close for now. And thanks for watching and have a nice time.